If you have observed carefully, the biggest political subject across African countries during elections may vary by regions in Africa, but the most recurring or common amongst them all in terms of the key subjects of interest to voters has to do with economic situation of the country, the security of the country, and the corruption perception of the government of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the key issues that actually influence many voters in who they vote for during elections across Africa in 2025. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want to present to you that by the end of 2030, I believe the most important subject in Africa's politics will be on these two topics. First is immigration, and second is security. And I'm predicting this because of current events happening across this continent. For the first time in Africa's history, insecurity in one country isn't limited to that country anymore, but to the rest of the neighboring countries and to even the continent at large. Ladies and gentlemen, the rise of insecurity has necessitated the mass movement of people, and therefore the need to have the conversation on who is coming in, what they will be doing whilst they are in, and how long they will stay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's already started in the Western countries. America is currently dealing with it, and so is Europe. And if you understand the trend of geopolitics in the world, you should know that it's coming next to Africa. This is the topic for this episode, and I know you are curious on where I am going with this. So join me then. Let's get into it.
Africa Funder is a website which enables you to raise funds from people in the diaspora in order to assist with the completion of projects that would help to foster the growth and development of the continent. Raise funds for a range of diverse projects, whether it be for schools, classroom remodeling, healthcare services, or the next unicorn technology company. Sign up now and allow us to begin this journey together.
Hi, I'm Cyrus, and this is Tuntum Network in Accra, Ghana. Be sure to subscribe and click on the bell for more of my videos. Now, the idea of migration isn't a new thing, but the idea of a country and nationality is. There is a growing concern and a lot more focus on identifications when it comes to where a person is originally from and where they live now than ever in the history of the world, and is gradually taking the center stage in Africa. This is because over 80% of all African migration happened within the continent. I repeat, as a situation of fact, over 80% of all African migration happens within the African continent, more than Africans moving to any other continent. And this situation should have been the most preferred. This situation, ladies and gentlemen, should be the ideal situation for regional integration and community building. But there has been a persistent failure on the part of individual African countries in providing a credible national identification system, and the breakdown of law enforcement on other countries that has incited the need to see this situation as becoming problematic. Let me use this simple scenario to simplify what I just said. When you see the European Union thrive, it isn't by coincidence that they do so. Rather, it is because of certain laid down policies and guidelines which all member countries observe. This provides a shared responsibility on the part of all member countries when it comes to security and the application of law. But in the absence of such a system, the burden is laid on individual host country in an isolated case to maintain their system in the face of all these issues brought about by non-locals at the cost of those countries. Ladies and gentlemen, at their own cost. This is the problem we have, and as a result of this, issues of immigration are beginning to take the center stage in local politics. Ladies and gentlemen, in May of last year, this became a topical subject in South Africa's national elections, causing the EFF party to lose many of its National Assembly seats. In my opinion, the vast majority of voters in South Africa were not on board the immigration policies of the EFF. Should they form a government, they did not support it. But that, ladies and gentlemen, that incident in South Africa was just the beginning of events, similar events and trends to happen in Africa. The future of Africa's elections is going to be centered around who can protect our borders the most and who can protect our communities as well. Listen, folks, Africa must unite. That's what I personally preach and hope to experience it in my lifetime. But this unity I preach will have to come with policies and responsibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, there must be a set standard to keep each member country equally interested and invested and responsible. We cannot unite on the back of lawlessness and irresponsibility. That will simply be a disaster in the making. Each African country must be up and running in addressing their insecurity and economic issues and not expect to dump it on others for the reason of an African unity. That is unfair. That's going to end up making the few serious African countries suffocate and eventually break. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what's happening in London currently and in many parts of the world. And we should learn to avoid such incidents. The issue of immigration sometimes becomes so central that economic circumstances end up becoming irrelevant for a moment in politics. And this is how you know what I'm saying is true. Check this out. Have you observed the rage that is sparked whenever there are accusations of illegal immigrants being registered and allowed to vote in any national election anywhere in the world? Have you observed the rage that comes with it? Even in America's election in 2020, similar incident occurred and made people riot in the nation's Capitol building. Ladies and gentlemen, the accusation of a rigged election due to illegal immigrants voting is one act that's totally unacceptable in every country. Why is it so, ladies and gentlemen? Why do people care about who is voting even though we all live in the same country? Why should we care? It is simple. It's because national identity and sovereignty is a real thing and needs protection. If anyone, irrespective of their background, so long as they live in the same country or community like us, can vote, then there might as well not be any need for a passport or national ID, ladies and gentlemen. Hear me out on this. In 2025, this may not be a subject of serious concern for your country yet, but trust me, give it 5 years. Whoever is standing for office will have to make their plans clear on what and how they are going to handle the issue of immigration across Africa. Mark my words. This is not about hate or stereotypes. This is far from that. This is about protecting the corner where you live. Who will protect you, ladies and gentlemen, if not you? Who will take care of you, if not you? Listen, folks, the problems of Africa are either going to be solved collectively or individually. One way or the other, we will have to deal with them on the level we can. When it comes to imperialism and neocolonialism, we'll have to stand together and fight. When it comes to security and economic handicaps, we'll still have to stand together and fight. But it means all of us and not some of us, whether as a collective or as individual countries, must stand up and fight. Listen, you cannot be celebrating a non-performing president and still expect your people to be catered for by another country. You cannot do that. Every African country has the primary obligation to take care of their home country first and then consider newcomers. And there is nothing wrong with that, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that we want unity shouldn't mean we melt away our individual national identities and sovereignties. That is not what I'm preaching here. No, that's not done in anywhere, not in any country or any continent or in any group. This prediction I'm making today might occur earlier than you may think. And when it does, we will be back here discussing it, God willing. But in spite of all the challenges with dealing with some of African countries and their nationals, there are a few other African countries who have so far shown a real interest in this call for United Africa by way of making their traveling to those countries totally or completely free. They are Ghana, Kenya, Gambia, Rwanda, Benin, and Seychelles. I totally support this policy and hope all African countries eventually catch up. Let's obey the immigration and civil laws of every country we find ourselves, and we should be fine. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for taking time to watch this one. I'll bring you another one very soon. God bless Africa and lead us the right path. Be sure to subscribe and click on the bell for more. I'll be back very soon. It is bye-bye for now.